So you want to make a video that's a little more involved than this? Good idea. And the best way to do that is to get more control over the shooting elements. And the best way to get that is in a setup in your own home or business, no matter how small an area you can afford. That gives you total control over lighting, sound, and environmental noise. You can shoot in a fraction of the time it takes in any other setting. The commute to the studio takes less than a minute. It gives you the highest quality video possible. You can shoot the video in the same time it takes to watch it. And for most people, it's the only way to be consistent in creating video content, which is really the key to doing video content marketing. So let's find out how to set up your very own simple but highly effective video on demand studio. Sometimes I feel like Doctor Who in his TARDIS. This small room has taken me all over the universe with stunning reliability and fast. And here you can shoot a really nice video in the same time it takes to shoot one that looks like the phone was still in someone's pocket. And I know you can do better, or you wouldn't be here. Here, of course, is the 5-Minute Authority, where people learn how to help others by using video. So those videos should not be just watchable, but makeable on demand. That's what this special 2-part series is all about. In this series, I'll show you how to make a good use of a very small space, if that's your concern. Now, in this first video, we'll look at the 2 most critical success factors in setting up your space, because they determine all the decisions about what will go into it. Those factors are the container and the arrangement of elements inside it. I'll explain what that means in just a moment. Then you'll gather some information, and after watching part 2 of this series, you'll know immediately how to do the setup and solve the setup problems that could otherwise stop you cold. So let's get started. First of all, buying the container. Your studio is going to be based on your budget. Now, when people think about budget, they think about the money part, but the real expense by far has to do with the room. You know how they say time is money? Well, in this case, inches are like gold. See, every piece of equipment costs you something in space. We can make the space much more valuable by using it well. And that starts by simply measuring the room. And I don't mean casually measure, like, walking it off, but measuring right down to the inch. The length, the depth, and the height. If it's a small room and you don't give it that attention, this whole thing could end in disaster, because this truly is a game of inches. I've seen it happen way too often. People try this without knowing the space and how this stuff all works together, and it becomes costlier because they have to tear it all up and start over again. And maybe they give up instead, which I guess is even more costly. So the size of your container, knowing your room dimensions, is the single most critical piece of information you have if you want to be successful at this. Then there's how that container is used, based on the most dominant feature of the studio, which for most people is going to be a green screen. That will be success factor number 2. Let's see why. Your camera will be selected on the basis of how much of you can be seen based on where you have to stand in the room. We'll call that X. Most of this is about solving for X. And most of solving for X is going to be about where the green screen is and how it's lit. If you use a teleprompter, where you stand, determined by the green screen, will also determine how large your teleprompter screen can be without you looking like you have the shifty eyes. The height of your ceiling also makes a big difference in the kind of backlight you can use. The backlight becomes very important when you're doing what? Green screen. You see how everything always comes back to the green screen. And really, because it's the way to get the most content-rich videos, the setup I'm going to describe in part 2 will be based on room dimensions and green screen. So you can see exactly how the puzzle pieces come together, and more importantly, how to solve those space problems that may look insurmountable, at least right now. Oh, and by the way, this isn't going to be a cookie-cutter solution either. If it was, thousands of businesses would be prevented from creating their own studio. but I've seen great ones built in spaces most experts wouldn't have thought possible before we made it work anyway, like offices that were very small to begin with. It isn't so much about the limitations of the space, but in using them strategically. So, to get the best possible results out of part 2 of this series, there's something important you can do between now and then. You can measure the room you've picked out as the most likely candidate for your studio. I mean, right down to the inch. Then, look at your equipment, if you have some. Here are the kinds of things it will help you to know. How large and deep are your soft boxes? How much light do they throw? How many of them do you have? Do you have a microphone? Do you have a monitor? If you have a green screen, how high and how wide is it? Do you have a way to hang it nice and straight so there are no wrinkles in it? How wide a shot can your camera get from close up without giving you Hulk hands? And if you have a teleprompter, how large is the screen? Now, if you write down the answers to any of these questions that apply to you, then the next video will show you if you have the right equipment, and if so, what to do with it in the space available. And then you'll be able to create video on demand. I know, that's a lot to do. But remember, the time you put in now is in reverse proportion to the time you'll enjoy making videos later. For creating your own personal TARDIS, I'm Steve Washer. See you next time for part 2 of this special edition of the 5-Minute Authority.